closer to understanding kind of what happens with toxic shame in some places. Okay, nowhere fucking near what happens with it, actually thinking about it. I think there's a broad spectrum, but I feel like I'm starting to understand kind of how to identify it in places that I previously could not identify it. Okay. And I feel like being able to identify it gives me a little bit of space from it and kind of some freedom to work around it, I guess. Like, if it just feels like objective reality, then I can't fight it because it drags me down into it and into the things it's presenting to me as if it's reality. But if I can identify it as, oh, this is just toxic shame, it's just being a cunt again, then I can kind of not pay the ideas of what it's trying to sell me so much notice, I guess. And then it's kind of easier to go about not acting on them. Like, I'm getting a lot of body shaming, like aesthetic shaming types of toxic shame right now. But if I can just stay in my body a little bit and recognize that that is actually just my self-image distorting, and that's just a part of toxic shame, then it gets a little bit easier. Oh, it doesn't get any fucking easier, but it becomes possible to ignore it. Like, I feel like I can shout over it at this point and just take blind leaps of faith that how I'm seeing myself is not how I actually look. Because it's not at all complimentary, the way that I'm seeing myself. It's not just like, it doesn't just affect my aesthetic. That's the thing. When it hits, it's not just like how I look in terms of how I actually look. It's like there's this whole image of the sort of person that I am attached to it. And like, there's this whole identity and like list of traits that I see in myself when it hits. And I've realized that it makes me dissociate to talk about it. It's really hard to acknowledge that it's hitting me, identify it as toxic shame, acknowledge that it's there, acknowledge that it's not reality, and talk about it and not get like, it feels wrong to identify it, and it makes it like go batshit crazy. And then there's so many different tangents going off in my head about like all of the ways it's proclaiming me as awful or unsafe. it's quite hard to like keep track of reality through that happening and just keep talking and focused on what I want to say instead of getting swept up with it, because it's like a whole felt sense, like a whole felt sense of my entire identity, as well as a really distorted self image, as well as a really distorted identity image. And it's like I see it, but also I feel it. But I don't realize that I'm not actually it. It's kind of hard to explain. It feels like if I try and fight it, I can combat it by trying to stay more in my body with the somatic experience of my emotions. And if I stay more with the reality of our actual experience in my body, then I can kind of see out from my own perspective. This is new for me. It's maybe normal for like people who haven't been traumatized the fuck out of their bodies, but for me this is new. And to be able to do it in more and more contexts where I'd normally get pulled out of my body is really cool. I've noticed that that seems to be a counter, because when I'm seeing myself through the lens of toxic shame, I don't realize I'm seeing myself through a lens of toxic shame. I just think I must be these things and this must be reality, and it affects my actions because of that. But I can counter for it by kind of recognizing it's happening, identifying the feeling as toxic shame, identifying the emotion as disgust, externalizing it back out to all of the cunts that made me internalize toxic shame in the first fucking place throughout our lives. And being in my body in our experiences, kind of fucking regardless of anything. Like, regardless of whatever I'm doing or saying, kind of refusing to view everything or anything I do and say through the lens of toxic shame. Kind of refusing to come out of my experience to look back at us through this third person type deal at how I must look to whoever is observing me, be it like past person or fictional audience or like whatever viewpoint the toxic shame tries to make me see myself from. It is really exhausting to like catch and notice and fight all the time, but it's so much more exhausting left unchecked, just naturally playing out. I think toxic shame might be like one of the most draining, most constant symptoms that makes me withdraw and affects everything in day-to-day actions that is so invisible to me. Like, I haven't even noticed. Okay. I haven't even noticed it. Like, because you don't notice it's toxic shame. It's not like I notice. It's not like I notice it's toxic shame and think, oh, I'm experiencing toxic shame. Like, I might start to now as I learn. But at first, I'm just like, oh, I haven't been able to reach out and talk to my friends for a few days. I'm a horrible friend. That they must feel like they're being love bombed because we were able to reach out more at first, and now we barely ever talk, which isn't true anyway. We're still in daily contact, so it's like, it's not true. And it takes largely overgeneralized descriptions, and it paints this really distorted image, because it's not like just those words and whatever associations might come to mind from those words alone. It's like I see this kind of image of myself that now that I know what emotion I'm looking for, I would say, yeah, it generates disgust. I don't feel disgust for us. But seeing that image makes me feel disgust. And then it's like thinking that's what I look like, I guess, makes it. I guess that's where it becomes like toxic shame and self disgust because that's not actually what I look like. It's not actually who I am. But in those moments, I feel like it is. So it's like. It's weird. I can both see that that doesn't apply to me and isn't true, and it feels like it is when it happens. Like, the last few days, I've been able to be in daily contact and like pretty open contact as well, actually, with a couple of our friends who we speak to the most and Ryan. And we've managed to like kind of be able to say what's going on for us and kind of check in and kind of respond to what's going on for them, just like maybe once or twice a day, and not as in depth as we would like to be able to. But it's like it feels like I don't even see the ways we're responding that are good at all. It feels like I just get this like disgusting goblin-y image of this like manipulative, cold, callous, um, selfish, self-absorbed. I'm not sure what other traits. Negative, conversation domineering person. It's helpful to list traits actually because it's like I can see actions just off the top of my head that completely disprove all of those traits I've just listed as being anything to do with us. But I don't naturally think, oh, this is toxic shame. I just see an action, my brain conjures this image and like this entire narrative and this entire story around it, like they must feel love bombed, they must see me like this. So it's not just like this horrible list of traits and qualities that I see in this image and that I feel is my image, even though I'm kind of seeing it. So it's not like the first person point of view that I would feel my emotions from when I'm in my body and like actually feeling connected to the reality of who I am more like now, I guess. Where, by the way, I feel a shit ton of pain and grief because just broadly, all of this shit. I also feel really proud because this is a shit ton of really complex stuff to be able to come back from and get to the point of being able to feel my own experience. And I feel really lucky and grateful and furious and in pain. Kind of hopeful. A little bit of excitement there. Pure exhaustion. Oh my god, I actually feel a lot and I didn't realise because it's like, I guess I'm not in my experience when I'm feeling just toxic shame. It kind of blocks the rest of my experience because I think I'm in my experience and feeling how I feel, but I'm not really. I'm just feeling shame and like the projected, distorted image of what I think I look like through that lens, but it's being internalized as a felt sense of identity. It's weird. It's really weird. And then yeah, at the time, I just think I feel this. I feel all of that, and I feel this like room spinning overwhelm if I tried to talk to anyone about it. It's avoidant terror of talking to people that, like, tangents upon tangents of thoughts will just spin out in my head so that it feels so inaccessible to even begin to describe where we're coming from, because everything compounds on top of itself and just adds to this fucked up image I've got of myself, and just seems to further prove it and, like, intensify it and intensify the feeling in my chest and stomach and throat of, like, suffocating, burning disgust, I guess. I don't really know how to describe what toxic shame feels like, other than that it makes me want to avoid the shit out of anything that will bring it up. But then that adds to it, because it's like I'm proving that I'm a neglectful friend by not being able to message them, which is blatantly untrue. But it feels really real when it's happening. It feels like, yeah, obviously this proves I'm a horrible person. And it kind of cherry picks data. Like, my mind in this state will have a serious confirmation bias and will only see things that are evidence of the shame's distorted narrative and distorted felt sense of self. And I totally, completely, literally forget, cannot see, am blind to anything that disproves that. So this is why listing characteristics that I see when it hits are quite good, because then I can be like, well, if I was a neglectful friend, I wouldn't have just spent like a solid few minutes sending voice notes and trying to send gifts and managing and, like, same for, like, oh, I never spend any time with Ryan and he's the most amazing boyfriend in the world, and then onto the abandonment fears of, like, he's gonna find people that spend more time with him than we can. But, like, that feels really true whenever I'm doing anything that prioritizes us. And then, I mean, not whenever, but, like, when shame's in the mix. And then it's we've been playing Dying Light, like, okay, so I don't remember it a lot because other people have played and they're people that I have, like, full blown amnesia between. So, like, I'm not going to remember that that's happened. Maybe I miss him as well. Like, I love having other people front. I fucking love it. I love that I have the backup. I love that I have the support. I love seeing other people's jackets hung over the back of the chair, and notes in different handwriting written in the journal, and the desk being cleaned, and the bureau being arranged in a way that I didn't do. Like, I love the signs of life of having, like, a busy family environment from other people in this system being here. And I do really miss Ryan when I'm not in the front. And I miss people inside when they're not in the front and when I'm not inside with them. There's a lot of missing people with this. And a lot of missing yourself, I think. But, like, see what bullshit the toxic shame presents to me, because we are spending time with Ryan. But it's like it fits the evidence to form its narrative instead of, doing it the accurate way. And the more stuff compounds, the more I can't bear to look at this distorted image of myself that I think is just looking at myself. And the more I see it reflected off my actions, the more I can't bear to look at my actions, which is why I think withdrawing from vlogging, from journaling, from talking to people just happens sometimes with it. Because I'm so convinced that this is what I look like and I can't bear to look. And there's this like terror and this deep discomfort and pain. For what I'll see, and this really powerful avoidance, so that I don't have to look at how unrecognizable and awful I look to myself through those lenses while it feels so real.